Public housing is one of the few ways that people are able to have a subsidized rent for their apartment. Without public housing, a lot of people would simply just be pushed out of the city.
NYCHA tenants have a lot of obligations and responsibilities. One obligation or responsibility is to provide proof of income on an ongoing annual basis. It's not an easy thing to do. It requires getting documentation and submitting it, and frequently going to a management office where the person on the other side won't accept the papers or maybe is not even there.
My experience living in New York City housing is something that I will have considered very, very good. But however, the management style and the overwhelming inadequacies have turned NYCHA into something else. I haven't lived there for 24 years without any problem. It was very depressing because you don't know where you're going to live tomorrow, you don't know what is going to happen. It caused a lot of emotional depression.
Public housing tenants across the city, working class families, predominantly people of color, deserve to live with dignity in their own homes. And to the extent that the New York City Housing Authority is not affording them that dignity, we have an obligation at Legal Services to get NYCHA to really clean its act.
For all of our plaintiffs here, their income lowered, and they went to NYCHA asking them to lower their rent accordingly. NYCHA either ignored their request or didn't lower their rent correctly, and then NYCHA sued them in housing court for non-payment of rent, including for rent that they shouldn't have charged them based on the change in their income.
This is a citywide issue and not just a problem with any one NYCHA project. It's really about the systems in place at NYCHA currently.
We definitely hope there's systemic change in NYCHA for every New York City public housing resident to not have to be concerned about being overcharged.
I follow the rules, process, and yet I have to go through this hardship. But I am confident that justice will be done.
A critical part of our housing practice, we try to bring system change-oriented litigation and advocacy so that we can have a higher impact with our resources and change those laws and change those practices and policies and protect an even greater number of tenants.
East Harlem is one of the neighborhoods where rents are increasing, income is not increasing, and gentrification is now taking over. People who have lived here for generations can no longer afford to live here.
I absolutely do not regret moving to East Harlem, but I do regret landing in an Emerald Equity property. Never in my life have I had to endure such disregard for my personal safety, the lack of heat and hot water, and hearing the rats underneath the floorboards just having a little party. The rats owned that was their building. We were just sort of sharing space.
I would have leaks in my bathroom, and the bathroom ceiling would literally cave in. You would have think that they would come immediately to fix that. No, it took them months to do that.
We were without gas for over a year.
Just the conditions that they were living in and are still living in is deplorable.
In East Harlem, we're working with a number of buildings owned by a landlord called Emerald Equity Group. We've had several cases with them throughout the years. They had a business plan that was predicated on being able to harass out long-term rent-stabilized tenants in favor of newer gentrifying tenants who are paying market rents. It's kind of the model of what we call predatory equity.
There were large portions of the tenant body that had been on rent strike for quite some time, as they're permitted to do under New York State housing law. At the end of the day, if you don't have money, it's hard to continue to operate a building.
Tenants filed proof of claims in the bankruptcy case, alleging claims from racial discrimination to tenant harassment to rent overcharge to basic denial of repairs and services.
My hope is that we have a nonprofit developer steps in, purchases the building, and maintains it affordable for this community.
The fact that a a real estate giant can be harmed by, a bunch of, people of color from East Harlem. I cannot thank you guys enough for all your support, your assistance, your advice.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank Legal Services for everything they've done. I couldn't have this level of confidence without your support.